Breaking news from the Bronx tonight, where federal authorities have launched a sweeping RICO case, the alleged leader of the criminal enterprise.
In federal courtrooms across the United States, some cases are built around a single crime. But when prosecutors invoke the Racketeer, Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, they're telling a different story. Amon didn't rush. That was the first thing people misunderstood about him. They heard hitter, and they imagined heat. Something reactive, something that moved fast and didn't think. That wasn't Amon. Amon was the opposite of heat. Amon was the kind of cold that didn't announce itself. The kind that settled into the bones before you noticed the room had changed. He sat in a Tahoe parked on a block in the Bronx at 11:43 on a Wednesday night. He was watching a building entrance, waiting for the moment to become available. Denton had grown up in this building. 3rd floor apartment, 3C. His mother still lived there. She kept the lights on until midnight every night, the same way she'd done when Malik was coming home late, and she wanted him to see the light from the street to know someone was awake for him. She was still keeping them on. Habit, maybe, or the particular faith of mothers who couldn't stop preparing for the return of someone who wasn't returning. He'd known Malik Denton for 19 years. They'd grown up 4 blocks apart, gone to the same school until Denton stopped going. They ran together. Denton wasn't soft. Nobody who understood what June 18 actually was would describe Malik Denton as soft. But he was Amon's, in the specific way that certain people belong to you, not through paperwork or declaration, but through the weight of history. And now, he was a count on a federal indictment. Murder in aid of racketeering. Amon had read those words in a news article on his phone 3 weeks after the arrest. Then he had put the phone face down on the table and sat without moving for a long time. The government had given Denton's death a category. Nobody had asked Amon what category it belonged in. He watched a man exit the building. Wrong man. He waited. Retaliation was the word people used. It wasn't precise. Retaliation implied balance. Amon didn't want balance. He wanted acknowledgement. The kind you couldn't argue with. The system wasn't going to provide that. The system was going to take the man who ordered it and put him in a building, feed him 3 times a day, and argue about him in a language Denton wouldn't have recognized. Amon was going to provide something else. But first, leverage. Amon had been in the life long enough to understand that moving without information was how people ended up as counts on indictments. He knew something about June 18 that the feds didn't know. He was still deciding what to do with it. A second man exited the building. Amon checked the time, 11:58. He stepped out of the Tahoe. Three miles south, Sin Carter was awake at midnight, staring at the ceiling. She'd been awake most nights since the arrest. What kept her awake was specific. It had names, dates, and a particular quality of light she could still recall from rooms she wouldn't be returning to. The proffer was 4 days ago. She had been precise, deliberate. She had sat across from Omen Kells and Kane Mall and chose words the way you choose steps on uncertain ground, testing the weight before committing, never fully committing until the surface held. Consulted. She'd given them a word that put RICO at the center. She told the truth in the specific way that the truth could be told to serve more than one purpose simultaneously. She told herself this regularly, that she had told the truth. Precision wasn't deception, that the words she chose described what she knew rather than what she suspected, and that the distinction between knowing and suspecting was real and defensible. At midnight, alone, the distinction felt thinner. She and RICO had been careful. Careful in a way that people are careful when the thing they're protecting is too important to risk through carelessness. No public acknowledgement, no photographs, no moments that could be described later by someone who needed to describe them. They'd been, in the language of the street, a secret. In the language of the indictment, they were co-defendants. The government didn't know what they were to each other. Rosenstein didn't know either. Nobody knew except the two of them in the rooms they'd been in, and rooms didn't testify. She thought about RICO on the other side of the facility. She hadn't told him about the proffer. She told herself she was protecting him. She understood she was also protecting herself from his face when he understood what she'd done. Amon's name existed in Sin's life the way certain things existed, present but unspoken. She had met him 2.5 years ago at a studio session that ran until 4 in the morning. A mutual connection had brought him through. Amon sat in the back of the control room and listened to a playback without speaking. And when everyone else was talking about the track, he looked at her and said, "The bridge is the best part, and you buried it." He was right. That was how it started. It lasted 8 months. Not continuous, interrupted, resumed, interrupted again. The rhythm of something that neither of them sanctioned, but neither could end. She had told herself it was separate, that the worlds didn't touch, that Amon's life and Rico's life existed in proximity, but not in contact. The way two electrical currents could run parallel without the catastrophic consequence of crossing. She'd been precise about this too. She ended it in January, 4 months before the arrest. It wasn't clean. Nothing that involved Amon ended clean. She made a decision and enforced it the way she enforced decisions, through consistency of behavior rather than declaration. She hadn't thought about him much after that. Then, June 18 happened. She learned about Malik Denton. She had felt something when she heard the name, but hadn't let herself identify what that feeling was. She hadn't connected Denton to Amon at the time. The name hadn't surfaced. The geography hadn't aligned in her mind. It aligned later, quietly, in the way that knowledge assembled itself when you weren't looking directly at it. Pieces settling into a shape you recognized only after it was already formed. Denton and Amon. Amon and the territory. The territory and June 18. June 18, RICO's phone and the two words, handle it, that will now account of murder and aid of racketeering. She held that shape at a distance ever since. Not because she couldn't look at it, because looking at it directly meant asking a question she couldn't answer without consequences that moved in every direction at once. Had RICO known about Amon? She didn't believe he had. She'd been too careful. The worlds had been too separate. RICO was perceptive, but he'd been focused. The money, the territory, the escalating pressure of a case assembling around him that he hadn't yet understood was assembling. He hadn't been watching her in the way that would have been required to see what she kept invisible. But the territorial logic of June 18 was real, independent of anything personal. Denton's people had been moving wrong for months before that night. The Wire, which she had now read in the discovery materials Rosenstein provided, showed the conversation building over weeks. It would have arrived at June 18 or something like it, regardless. The collision was always coming. That was the thing she returned to when the question got too heavy to hold. The collision was structural. It was written into the geography, the economics, and the specific momentum of how those two worlds had been moving toward each other. Nothing she'd done or not done would have changed the physics of it. She believed this. She needed to believe this. At 12:30, she rolled onto her side and thought about a specific night 2 years ago. A hotel room in Midtown. She and RICO had ordered food they barely ate and talked until 3 in the morning about things that had nothing to do with money, territory, or the life. He looked at her that night with the quality of attention she had never been able to locate in anyone else. The look of a man who found something he hadn't expected to need and wasn't certain what to do about that needing. She understood then that they were past the point of manageable. She hadn't stopped anyway. She wondered what his face looked like right now. whether he knew she had signed, whether he knew what consultant had caused her to choose. The word arrived the next morning, but not through Rosenstein. Through a woman in the unit, neither ally nor threat. The woman passed her in the corridor after breakfast and said something low and quick without eye contact. 2 words. Amon's out. Sin kept walking. Her face didn't change, but something moved through her. Amon was out, which meant Amon was moving, which meant the case, her case, RICO's case, the government's carefully constructed enterprise theory, was about to develop a dimension that existed outside the indictment, outside the wire intercepts, outside the proffer agreement, outside anything Omen Kells had drawn on a whiteboard or Kane Marr had written in a notebook. Amon Vonn wasn't in the case file. He wasn't a box on the chart. He wasn't a cooperator, defendant, witness, or a threat the government had identified and accounted for. He was a known hitter who'd lost someone, and he was out. She returned to her cell, sat on the edge of the bunk. For the first time since the arrest, since the proffer, since the careful construction of her own survival, she realized the thing she'd been so precise about was only part of the picture. The other part was walking around, free. And she had no way to reach him, no way to know what he knew, no way to calculate what he intended to do. She sat with her hands flat on her knees and thought about the collision that had always been coming, the one that was structural, the one that would have happened regardless. It was still coming. She'd just been inside when it arrived. Amon moved without sound. J-Bo was 20 feet ahead, walking toward a Camry parked halfway up the block. He had his phone out, head down. Amon closed the distance in 8 steps. He met him at the driver's side of the Camry. J-Bo turned his head half a second too late. He got 1 syllable out before Amon had him against the driver's side door. What followed wasn't fast. Amon wasn't a fast worker. He needed the specific, irreversible acknowledgement that he'd come for. The physical transfer of weight from one body to another. The moment when a man understood what his choices had cost someone else. J-Bo was trying to speak. Amon stared in his eyes. "You drove," he said. Not a question, a fact. J-Bo looked into Amon's eyes. Amon didn't stop pushing the blade into his abdomen until his arm got tied and he saw blood. J-Bo made sounds, then fewer sounds, then nothing. When it was done, Amon stood over him. He looked up at the 3rd floor window. The light was still on. He walked back to the Tahoe, got in, and drove south toward Mott Haven without looking back. His bloody hands were steady on the wheel. That was the thing nobody understood about Amon Vonn. It was never heat. It was never rage. It was always cold and calculated. Across the city, in a parking garage in Mott Haven, Amon sat in the Tahoe and made a phone call. The conversation lasted 40 seconds. He said 4 words that mattered and several that didn't. Find out who talked. He ended the call. He sat there thinking about Malik Denton, the 3rd floor apartment and the light that was still on at midnight for someone who wasn't coming home. He thought about sin. He'd heard about the prophet through people who owed him the information. He didn't know what she had said. He didn't know what consulted meant, or what it would do to the case or to the man at the center of it. He knew she talked. He knew she was inside. He knew that whatever she said had been precise, because sin was always precise. She was precise about everything. He wondered if she'd been precise about him. He wondered if his name was in a room somewhere. He started the truck and pulled out of the garage. He drove without destination.